For over 50 years, the University of Alabama at Birmingham has been a pioneer for innovation, leveraging research and diversity to design a better future. The School of Health Professions has partnered with Lakeshore Foundation, an Olympic and Paralympic training site that promotes physical activity through fitness, sports, recreation, and advocacy to create the UAB Lakeshore Research Collaborative. This network of experts collect data and design interventions that impact millions of lives by promoting health and wellness for people with disabilities at all mobility levels. Our findings are then disseminated and implemented through our CDC-funded National Center on Health, Physical Activity, and Disability. Our Rehabilitation Engineering Center conducts research and development using some of the world's latest technologies. This includes developing digital tools to provide precision-based exercise and recreation guidelines. In our testing center, we create and verify new exercise and wellness regimens that hold promise for day-to-day activities. We analyze prototype technologies, certifying accessibility, and tracking health improvements at various functional levels. Then we have our telehealth suites, where we bring our experts in the UAB Lakeshore Research Collaborative to the screens of people across the world, fostering community and education in the process. We believe a better future is possible when everyone is included. We believe that knowledge will change the world.
So like mentioned earlier, we cannot do justice to everything we do here with that 2-minute video. So whoever wants to visit UAB Lakeshore Collaborative, please let us know and we'll give you a tour. And I would like to introduce Dr. Dean, our Dean, Dr. Butler, to give us opening remarks. So Dr. Butler is the 5th Dean of the UAB School of Health Professions. Dr. Butler came to UAB from the Burden Lewis College of Nursing and Health Professions at Georgia State University, where he was the Associate Dean for Research and a Professor of Physical Therapy. He is a neuroscientist and a physical therapist with a special interest in motor control, neurorehabilitation, functional neuroimaging, and transcranial magnetic stimulation. During the past 20 years, he has had continuous funding from a variety of federal and private institutions, including the National Institute of Health, National Science Foundation, American Heart and Stroke Association, the Veterans Administration, and the Department of Defense. He has been chosen as a grant reviewer for state, national, and international review boards. He serves as a reviewer for 18 major rehabilitation journals and serves on the editorial board of 4 journals. Dr. Butler received his doctoral degree from the University of Iowa and earned his master's in physical therapy from Texas University in Houston. He also holds an MBA with a concentration in finance from Emory University. Prior to joining Georgia State in 2012, he was a faculty member at the Emory University School of Medicine. Before that, he was a postdoctoral fellow at the Heinrich Heine University in Düsseldorf, Germany. Dr. Butler, could we please request you to deliver the opening remarks?
Thank you so much for inviting me here today. That was a wonderful introduction. I can't thank you enough, but I want to thank everyone. Good morning. I want to thank everyone for inviting me here today. I was so pleased when the conference organizers asked me to open the RERCRecTech State of the Science Conference. First of all, I wanted to thank the entire team. I want to thank Dr. Rimmer, Dr. Tharamalai, and everybody who organized this. This is just a fantastic event, and I know you're going to have a great day today. I also want to thank the Institute on Disability Rehabilitation Research and the U.S. Department of Education, who provide support for the center. So without that support, couldn't do all of the fantastic things that you are going to talk about today. The Rehabilitation Engineering Research Center, or RECTech, is an important mission to expand knowledge and research on recreation technologies for people with disabilities, and to disseminate technology development through education, training, and collaboration with the private sector. This mission is very consistent with the mission and the vision of UAB and the School of Health Professions, which is to improve the quality of health through teaching, research, and translation of discoveries into practice, and to be recognized as the leading school of health professions in the country. RECTech allows us to do all this with the common thread of diversity, equity, and inclusiveness, and collaboration. In addition to our collaborations with the Lakeshore Foundation, we've had great partnerships with other schools and investigators at UAB, such as Sam Misko from the School of Engineering, who is the PI on an active video gaming development project for people who use a wheelchair. Dr. Alan Eberhardt, also from the School of Engineering, is the training director of RECTech and develops assistive technology for children with cerebral palsy. There have been several physical therapy, occupational therapy, and engineering undergraduate and graduate students who've rotated through RECTech and have been supported by funds through RECTech. Several predoctoral students in the PhD program in rehabilitation sciences and in engineering have been supported by RECTech funds. RECTech has helped shape the careers of several new investigators, including Dr. Thurmale, Dr. Mehta, Dr. Zoe Young, and Dr. Byron Lai, just to name a few. These investigators now have a growing list of grants funded by NIDLR, NIH, and others. We're really, really proud of all the accomplishments that we've had so far. As the Dean of the School of Health Professions, I am committed to the mission of RECTech. SHP's commitment to work with the School of Engineering and the School of Medicine and others at UAB to hire new faculty and recruit fantastic students. We're hiring faculty with research agendas aligned to that of RECTech, including recent hires of Jamie Tyler, who will have a joint appointment between the School of Engineering and the Department of Occupational Therapy, and Keith McGregor, who's coming to us from Emory University, who has an interest in developing technology for people with disabilities. We've recently hired a new director of our PhD in Rehabilitation Sciences program, Dr. William Thompson, who studies bone loss in people with disabilities. He is growing the PhD in Rehab Sciences program and attracting highly qualified students from across the nation and across the world. In the school, we are initiating a new undergraduate degree in Disability and Rehabilitation Sciences. The program focuses or will focus on human function, disability, and rehabilitation from the perspective of health science, social science, psychology, and assistive technology. It'll be part of the Department of Physical Therapy, but faculty from all departments and all schools at UAB will be involved. RECTech will provide a great opportunity for capstone projects and the like. UAB just began a unique doctoral degree program that may be one of the only kind in the nation. It's a doctoral philosophy degree in neuroengineering, and it's a joint program between the UAB Schools of Engineering and Medicine. Neuroengineering doctoral candidates will work with medicine and engineering faculty to study topics such as neuroprosthetics, neural networks, neurocomputation, advanced imaging, deep brain stimulation, and brain-computer interfaces. Again, just to name a few. When you consider the expertise of our faculty across so many fields at UAB that touch all these different aspects of engineering and medicine, rehabilitation, neurosciences, this environment is ideal for studying and developing new technology and is a real advantage that adds to the current and the future success of RECTech. Again, congratulations on all the accomplishments you've had over the years. I'm sure this is going to be a great RECTech State of the Science conference, and many new ideas and collaborations will be generated. With that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Anjali Forber-Pratt. Dr. Forber-Pratt is a disability activist, a two-time Paralympian, and the director of the National Institute on Disability, Independent Living, and Rehabilitation Research, affectionately known as NIDLR. As an investigator, her primary area of work relates to disability identity development. As a wheelchair user for over 35 years, Dr. Forber-Pratt is nationally and internationally recognized as a disability leader and mentor. As a Paralympic medalist in the sport of wheelchair racing, she's dedicated her life to helping others recognize their potential. Globally, she's involved with disability advocacy efforts related to access to employment, education, and sport through public speaking and media appearances. She was a White House Champion of Change in 2013, and the American Psychological Association awarded her the 2020 Citizen Psychologist Award for Advancing Disability and as a Human Rights and Social Justice Issue Award. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Anjali Forber-Pratt.
Thank you so much, Dean Butler. I really appreciate it. And welcome everyone to the RERCTech State of the Science Conference. I personally cannot wait to come down to visit, as it's been many years since I've been at Lakeshore and UAB. Once the pandemic allows for such travel, I look forward to meeting you all in person. A quick access note, today I'm wearing a yellow top with a black suit blazer over it, and my hair is in a ponytail, and I'm a brown-skinned woman. As you just heard, I recently joined the Administration for Community Living to serve as the director of the National Institute of Disability, Independent Living, and Rehabilitation Research. And instead of picking just one hat to wear today, I'm wearing them all because that really is what my story is about, the intersection of my identities and stories. As you heard in the brief introduction, as a Paralympic medalist, I am also an Indian adoptee, a manual wheelchair user, a woman, a researcher, and an activist. In our very short time together, I'm going to share a little bit about my story and background and why I'm so excited that we fund RERCs like RECTech that's doing this important work to explore physical activity, recreation, and sport to help to advance NIDLR's mission of improving not only health and function for people with disabilities, but also community living opportunities. I've also learned during this pandemic that unless I have a picture, as you see there on the screen, of me sitting in my manual wheelchair with my service dog Colton, that I have to out myself as being a manual wheelchair user, because folks can't see that here on the Zoom screen. I was adopted from India when I was 2 months old, and 2 months after arriving in the United States, I got sick with transverse myelitis, which left me paralyzed from the waist down. Growing up, it was more complicated than for my siblings to be involved in physical activity and sport, whether it was competitive or just recreational. Even the field day events in school took place on the grass, making them inaccessible to me, even if I had the skills to participate or even to dominate. First, I want to also talk a little bit about the relationship between physical activity, recreation, and sport. To me, these are all interconnected. Physical activity is like the umbrella of having movement, which can be either for recreational purposes, out walking, exploring trails, activities for fun with family or friends, or more organized like sport, which can also be either recreational in nature or competitive, ranging from the grassroots level, national level, or international level. To me, physical activity, recreation, and sport have always been an essential aspect of my life and a way to connect both with the disability community and non-disabled peers. Yet, there are disparities that still exist. Gaining exposure to sport and recreation opportunities still continues to be a struggle for some with disabilities, though we have come a long, long way since I was growing up. Living within walking distance of the 8-mile marker of the Boston Marathon, the whole town goes out to support this event. That's just what you do. And it's part of the whole marathon frenzy. So I remember being 5 years old, up early to walk over to stake out my spot on the curb to watch the thousands of runners go by. And we were there nice and early. And the strangest thing happened. A person in a wheelchair. Oh, I'm just going to pause here for a minute because it looks like we're having trouble getting the interpreter on screen. Can someone let me know if we're good to go? Looks like the interpreter might need to be pinned.
Yeah, we were trying to pin you as well. We are handling it. Thank you.
Okay, it looks like interpreter is pinned now. Great, thank you. So for me, as I was there watching this Boston Marathon, the coolest thing happened. I saw this really cool looking piece of technology, a racing wheelchair, whizzing by, going 25 miles per hour. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever. It really was a life-changing moment for me. These athletes had disabilities, but they grew up and went to college, competed in the Paralympic Games, had jobs, had families. I knew from that moment that this was something that I had to check out for myself. And that piece of equipment looked pretty dang cool. I even dressed up on Halloween as the winner of the Boston Marathon for about 3 years in a row. My parents found a Saturday sports program with other kids with disabilities that was about an hour away from my house. And suddenly doors were opening, and I just decided that I wanted to get more and more involved with sports. I fell in love with the sports with speed, particularly downhill skiing and wheelchair racing. But to be able to participate in these sports with other kids like me, that was incredible. I was able to learn self-confidence through sport and independence in terms of how to navigate the world, disability and all. There was a great deal of power in meeting other kids like me. These kids understood that missing a day of school to spend the day in the hospital was not all that it was cracked up to be. Sure, it was a day out of school, but I honestly would have much rather have been in school than spending the day at the hospital. We formed some amazing friendships and truly motivated each other. Having that sense of community was huge, not only for me, but also for my parents. And I started to learn that my wheelchair was enabling and empowering, which translated to all other areas of my life. It motivated me to want to succeed in school, to go to college, and to eventually compete internationally. And in comparison to many of my friends with disabilities, it kept me healthy and out of the hospital. People with spinal cord injuries who are involved in adaptive sports and recreation in the community are more likely to maintain a positive mood and prevent depression, feel more included and empowered within their communities, connect with positive mentors and peers, hold a steady job, have a positive disability identity, and have less secondary health complications. For me, this also led to Paralympic success. I made my first national team in 2007, and I remember a moment in Christchurch, New Zealand, representing the United States of America, lane 4, Anjali Forber-Pratt. I smiled confidently, threw a little wave out to the crowd, and was off as the starting gun went off. It was the 200-meter event, my favorite. And I remember coming around the final curve and into the straightaway, and I could hear my competitors coming up behind me, pounding away on their carbon fiber rims as technology had advanced so much at this particular event. And I wondered, are they going to catch me? Nah, not today. I kicked it into higher gear and pulled away, finishing the race nearly 2 racing chair lengths on the entire field. I did it. In that moment, I was the world champion. High atop the podium, listening to the surreal sound of the national anthem and watching the American flag wave in the wind, I took a moment to think to myself about how I got there and how that moment came to be. I do understand that not everybody will have the opportunity to become a world champion, but that pathway of getting there is something that I have benefited greatly from. I benefited from the availability and accessibility of sport and recreation programs and the really cool technology to allow participation. The commitment of my parents who allowed me to pursue this. I know none of this was easy. I had to write letters to fundraise. We even held bake sales and ice cream socials because my equipment was more expensive and my events often required traveling. There are numerous barriers. Cost is one, as I was just saying, not just of program participation or membership, but adaptive equipment. My racing wheelchair, for example, costs about $5,000 versus, a couple $100 for maybe a really high-end pair of Nikes. Transportation is another common barrier that we hear from the disability community. But very interestingly, in this day and age, here in 2021, we've seen new creative ways to allow for greater virtual access, including group fitness classes because of the pandemic. There have been several that have popped up: Sit Strong, Kakana, Move United, to name a few. My personal hope is that some of these virtual options will continue to stick around as we eventually move past the restrictions of the pandemic. This is one of disabled people's biggest fears, that leaps and bounds made in terms of breaking down barriers and enhancing accessibility because of the pandemic will be taken away or rolled back. And sadly, we're already starting to see some of this happen. I personally am thrilled that we're seeing some popular interest in improving accessibility to fitness and recreation programs from the recent announcement from Degree and Planet Fitness, and I hope that more will continue to join this movement and that there will be research that occurs alongside these efforts. The final point that I'd like to make is about the need for research in this area. A few remarks from both the side of the researcher and in terms of participants with disabilities. My opinion is that it should not only be the adaptive sport or disability sport researchers who take this up. We're behind in the grand scheme of things related to physical activity, recreation, or rec sport and tourism and sport for people with disabilities. We need research to approach this from many different domains, from kinesiology, engineering, psychology, sociology, economics. We must be collaborative and inclusive with our research and to learn from the much larger non-disabled fields in these areas. We're stronger in numbers, but we also must ensure that there's adequate representation of disability and disabled researchers on these interdisciplinary teams. Although it's hard to find, the National Center for College Students with Disabilities estimates that only 4% of all faculty members have disabilities. And these numbers are rather discouraging given that 25.7% of American adults, roughly 61.4 million, are disabled. So I call on all of us to ask, how can we do better? Historically, research has been done on or about disabled individuals, not with or alongside us. And so I also want us to ensure that our research includes all of us as participants. Oftentimes, research takes place specific only to one type of disability. And while sometimes that's helpful for the depth of a particular issue, we also must consider that broader disability community. So this means that our work on physical activity, recreation, and sport needs to include individuals with apparent and non-apparent disabilities across many disability groups. Physical disabilities, not just spinal cord injury, but also individuals who are deaf, blind, have cerebral palsy. We need to include individuals with psychological disabilities, intellectual disability, learning disabilities, chronic illnesses, and a newer subset of individuals are COVID-19 long haulers. We also need to be intentional about including people with varied backgrounds and experiences as participants in our studies, particularly from underserved and marginalized backgrounds. The diversity of the disability community is an asset, and our work must be inclusive of all people with disabilities. As director of NIDLR, I want to bolster the ways in which we involve people with disabilities across that entire research process and research enterprise. We all can be a part of this solution, and we need disabled individuals and non-disabled to commit to the future of our field. In closing, I want to encourage you all to think about ways in which you could reach out to a researcher in a different disciplinary field and potentially explore a collaboration this year. Perhaps a conference presentation, a grant to NIDLR, or a blog for your university. The possibilities are endless, and I really look forward to hearing how the conversation unfolds today and what is going on in the field related to physical activity, sport, and recreation for people with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fober-Pratt. That was an inspiring journey that you shared with us, and I'm sure you have inspired many more researchers and students in this call. And thank you so much for bringing up about the virtual options and the Planet Fitness changes. I hope you will stay until the end of the conference because you will get to learn more about like RERCRecTech's involvement in all the changes with the Planet Fitness and all the great virtual study options that we have.